with you, regardless where you are in the world. So, welcome to another episode of Hot and Spicy Chat about dating and relationships. And I wonder if you're ready for the next super exciting topic. Wonderful and amazing Christina Davy. Are you ready to announce the topic of today's show?
Yes, today actually we're going to talk about something quite serious that occurs in intimate relationships and not just, which is violence in relationships. So there's so many people that they grow up with violence
Mhm.
and they kind of role model or they don't know another way. And I think it needs to be addressed here in Australia. Recently, has been quite a bit of talk about it in raising awareness and really implementing new support, for people who are experiencing violence in a relationship. And I think it's about time for us to address it as well. What do you think, Olga?
I agree with you because very often, Christina, we don't even realize we are in a violent relationships, right? We
Mm.
don't even
Well,
realize that.
I think I think it's not that we don't necessarily realize, but I think that we don't know how to be any different,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's somehow in certain cultures it's accepted, right? So people who grew up with it. I remember, relatives who will say to me, "Oh, listen, like, is he beating you? Is he?" I'm like, "No, it's not about that. I'm like, it's about,
There we go. Yeah.
it's about I don't feel value in a relationship, or I don't feel." But they were like, their concern was really about, are you getting beaten up or not? Is like, you know, that's the only problem that can occur in an intimate relationship. But I
Mm-hmm.
think there's so much more that's happening before it gets there that we need to address, not necessarily, just the causes of why it's happening. And I think it comes down to the need of control and the need of dominating to feel significant as well, which are
Mm-hmm.
coping mechanisms that are not necessarily leading to any more closeness in a relationship, right? Or feeling safe, but
Mm-hmm.
rather actually more fulfilling the ego. What's your take on it, Olga?
I agree. I agree. There's no way somebody will be violent if they're not seeking something from it. Right? So people who are trying to be violent towards their partners or any other people out there, typically they're seeking significance, as you mentioned. Typically they're seeking importance. Typically they're seeking the power. Right? That's why they will be doing the violent actions. And again, I think we really, really need to talk also about differentiation and the ways and the types of violence, because very often people think violence means physical. My God, there's so many other types of violence that we have to be aware of, right? But regardless which type of violence people are using, what they're seeking is feeling powerful, feeling significant, feeling important above other people. That's not the way how to do it. There are other ways how you can feel powerful. There are other ways how you can feel significant. But very often they're not even aware of them. And also, it could be quite normal for them to behave that way because that's what they grew up with. Because remember, whatever
Mm.
you grew up with is your normal. So if you have seen violence in your relationships, in your family when you're growing up, that will be something you'll be looking up to and you'll be thinking, yeah, that's what everybody lives with. That's normal. That's exactly what should happen in a relationship.
And I want to come out clean and say something, about and share something about myself because I grew up. So I grew up in Romania, right, and
Mm.
with domestic violence at home, and uh, there were certain things that were kind of acceptable, and to some
Mm.
point, to some degree, when I was younger, I felt that it was okay to slap a guy when he really did the wrong thing, whatever what that wrong thing was at the time. It doesn't matter. So I found myself thinking that it's totally okay to slap someone's face, right,
Wow.
in response to something that when I felt offended by something, or when I felt,
Mm.
that they did a wrong thing, or something unfair or unspeakable to me, right? Um, and for a long time, I didn't realize that's also violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, it's just you just slap someone, but it's the impact on the other person, right, that you gotta look at. It's not necessarily the physical hurt as well, but the emotional damage that you can cause. And it took me a long time to really understand that the fact that I didn't know how to emotionally regulate myself will lead me to such explosive anger that, you know, I justified my own um, my own behavior. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering how many out there, you know, feel justified in their behavior when it comes to violence. And obviously, after, I just want to clarify that's not what I think, you know, and I have changed my ways of being, you know, as a matter of getting awareness and understanding that it was a coping mechanism that was not really serving me in any way, and just to learn better ways of expressing myself and really communicating what I need. So, have you come across in your life with, you know, domestic violence at all,
I
Olga?
did, Christina, because I grew up in quite dysfunctional family. My stepdad, he was an alcoholic, and there was a lot of arguments because of money, because of his alcoholism, because of him not being at home, because of many other things. And I've seen dishes being smashed. I've seen pans being thrown into each other. I've seen fights. I've seen all sorts of things, and that I remember it impacted me so much. And this is when my eagerness to learn about relationships started, because I remember looking at all of that thinking, okay, I know that is not good. Okay, because that was making me feel sad,
Mm.
upset, and not okay, right? So I knew that if I don't feel okay about this, there's something wrong about it. Even though I did not know how it should be the right way, but I knew that is definitely not the way how I want to be. But again, when we grew up with something, we think it's quite normal. So subconsciously, we think it's quite normal, and therefore we are either searching for something else out of curiosity or we're not. In my case, even though I grew up with that and that kind of was normalized, I still thought that was not normal. So it's a really weird one. But I knew that's not what I want. But it was so challenging because I did not know what I should want, because I have
Mm.
never seen anything different. Because when it comes to my grandmother, another role model couple, right? Because of course we always look at our parents and grandparents, right? These are our authorities, right? And her relationship with my granddad was also violent because he also was an alcoholic. Well, surprise,
Mm.
surprise, probably my mom grew up with dad being alcoholic. So of course she naturally just picked somebody who was into the same thing. Even though my dad died before I was born, probably there'll be a different scenario if he wouldn't die. But that's, we can't talk anything about that. But this is where my journey about relationships started, because I became very curious about how it can be different. And it doesn't mean I escaped violence. No, my phones were smashed. I had GPS on my car. I had guys who were threatening me. I had guys who were verbally violent. I had guys who were literally, even yesterday, I made a post about it was an anniversary of 8 years being within the Professional Speaking Association as a member, and also active member of being president and all that. And I made a post about that, even though it's a lot longer as I'm being a professional speaker. In any case, and I made a post and I mentioned that my professional speaking actually, on a bigger scale, started with a conversation with my ex-fiance. Ex-fiance is a clue. Ex-fiance. Because during the Christmas meal, when I said to him that, look, I actually really looking forward next year to step, from doing one-to-one coaching or one to a few in terms of training and workshops within organizations. I really would love to become a professional speaker and, to go around the world, motivate people, create big impact. And I'll never forget, he just pushed himself against the table and he was like, do you think you are to become a professional speaker? You came from a little
Mm.
village in Latvia. Nobody even
Wow.
knows you. Your English is, that is verbal violence. Okay, that is verbal violence. And you got to be aware of that.
Mm.
So for me, of course, that day I decided two things. Relationship is over. I'm going after my dream. Right? Two things were decided on,
Mm.
on the spot, right? But how many people are strong enough to recognize that that is violence? right? So that's why you
Yeah.
got to be
Yeah.
really aware that is violence. And I think we should touch base, if you're okay with that, Christina, on a couple of types of violence just to highlight for other people what could be the violence. Apart of physical, we're all aware that could be physical violence. But let's touch base a little bit. What is violence and how actually we can step away with it or deal with that? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Let's do it. So in that case, I probably will progress with the verbal violence because I already gave the example, right? And I think the most important thing when it comes to verbal violence is to understanding that people, when they are aggressive to you verbally, when they are trying to minimize you, when they're trying to belittle you, when they're trying to manipulate you somehow verbally, it is because they are feeling insignificant. It's because of their own insecurities, right? So whenever they are doing something to you verbally, it's your job to stay strong. Okay, it's them, it's not you. It is them.
And I think it's important to mention that you gotta stop this before it escalates, right? So you gotta remove yourself from the situation. You know, hey, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm just gonna give you some. I need some time to change state. I need some time to calm down. Or like you need to step away from that situation, because the more you stay in that situation when you are either frightened or angry, um, um, or somehow some strong emotion that you might feel at the time, I think it's important for you to understand that you can't communicate very well when you are in that emotional distress. So you need to really go and change state and come back and continue the conversation a bit later. Because that is yeah, you call it really well, like that verbal aggression or abuse, or it's actually psychological violence, and it has a strong effect on someone, and sometimes even more than the physical one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why, as you rightly said, just remove yourself from situation. Could be as easy as I need a bathroom break. Right? Just run away to the bathroom, and if you can, maybe even call your friend or call 999 if you need to, right? But it really is up to you understanding that if somebody is violent already, whether it is straight away physically, which usually doesn't happen straight away, it typically starts with little abuse verbally or threats here and there, right? Or maybe damaging your property here and there, throwing your phone, smashing your phone, whatever else, right? You got to understand it will only get worse. It will only get worse. Violence doesn't get better. They don't change. Okay, they don't change. If this is the way how they get their significance, if this is the only way how for them to feel important and powerful, they will continue with that. And you hoping you will change them is you wasting your time. The problem will change, but there's no guarantee they will change for you.
And it's important to also mention something that I'm not sure if many people are aware. I was actually talking to a client today about, people get aggressive when they also feel powerless.
Yes.
So if they feel powerless, they can't, make you understand something, or they can't find the word, they're frightened, okay? They get angry in order to control the situation and get that power. So it's like a cat, right? When the dog is approaching her, she gets bigger and like, right? We are talking about this in another
Yeah.
conversation. So with with people, we raise the tone of our voice. We get bigger, we hold the ground, so to speak, and we increase our level of aggression to get control, especially when we feel powerless and we are actually frightened, which is an interesting thing, because I don't think many people realize that the person who is doing the violence could also be the person who's feeling actually really weak, not strong enough, and they're acting that way in order to get that. So that thought can support you in that situation to also get control of your own emotions back, and start using a different part of your brain where you step into resourcefulness, and you actually can do a lot more than when you are really frightened yourself by the other person's power and strength.
Absolutely, you spot on there, and that's why it's really important to stay strong within yourself. And also, you got to realize if you, for example, speaking to your friends, right? That's one of the typical. So if you're speaking to, let's say, you're going to hair salon, you're speaking to the hair specialist, right? Just as a random gossip, whatever chat, right? And they ask about your relationship, how your relationship going, and if you're hiding, if you're not speaking about these parts of your partner being violent with you one way or another, that means there is something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, pay attention to the parts of your relationship that you're trying to hide, because most likely they are wrong and you know it subconsciously. So if that's the case, it's time for you to work on yourself. Why? Because violence kills your confidence. It kills your self-esteem and your confidence. So you got to stay strong about yourself. You got to work on yourself. I know, for example, another type of violence is spiritual or religious, right? This is when a partner can actually push on you some religious aspects, or they can force you some religious practices, or they can belittle your religious practices. They can ban you from doing something, or they can laugh at that or whatever else, right? So it kind of, yeah, it's just spiritual. It seems like it's a little thing. It seems like it's not that significant. Like, it's okay. It's just a spiritual part of my life. It's just religious part of my life. But that's who you are. That's who you
Mm-hmm.
are. And if they're not respecting who you are, if they're not giving you space to practice what you want to practice, or they are forcing you to practice something that is not yours, that is violence as well. And if it's not something you talk to your friends because, oh, it doesn't matter, it matters. It really matters. You got to be highly aware of that. So again, stick to what is right for you, right? Again, there are 8
Mm-hmm.
billion people in the world. You don't have to be in a violent relationship. And I know very often people stay in a violent relationship because for them, believe me or not, those who are listening to us now, sometimes it is safer for those who are suffering from violence to stay in a violent relationship than to go out there in a big world. Because what aggressors are training you to think that nobody will be with you. There'll be nobody who will choose you. You'll be alone forever, and they pick you, and only they will be with you. Nonsense. Absolute no.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to believe that because again, it gives them power. But that is
Yeah.
not true. That is
Mm.
not true.
And we gotta mention also sexual violence, right?
Yes.
I think sometimes if somebody has been in a just really aggressive kind of intimate relationships, they might not really know any different. And just to understand that you cannot at any time be really threatened anyhow to do something that you don't want, or so it's not just uh, if you feel like it's not your decision and you are coerced into doing something that you don't want, that's also obviously not okay. If you are being forced to prostitute yourself or sleep with someone who you have no intention, and you just feel like you have to, right? That's sexual violence as well. So
Mm.
ideally, we can all educate ourselves, and now they're doing a lot more in schools, in raising awareness, and obviously there are trainings and courses as well that you can apply and you can read. We have access to information, so hopefully people actually are reaching out for support to the organizations in that area, so they can just get a bit more awareness about what's okay and what's not okay, and what's in their power, and how is the law by their side as well to be supported in a situation like that.
Absolutely, you spot on. I'm so glad we live in the time when actually there's so much support out there. But I know very often people are held back by self-shame. But and you got to
Mm.
realize one thing: if you're in a violent relationship, whether it is physical or emotional or verbal, whether it is sexual or religious, spiritual, or whether it is financial, right, or even digital, you got to understand it's not your fault. Okay, but
Mm.
it is your fault to stay in it. It is your fault
Mm.
not to report it. Because you got to understand, if they are violent towards you, they might be violent to also your children. They could be violent to their parents. They could be violent to their siblings. right? And it's
I
your
think
job to really stand up for yourself.
understanding that they have a choice, I think, rather than their fault. I think understanding that you actually do have choices, that you might not be able to think about it simply because of how you are looking, the angle you're looking at this problem specifically. um, Often we are, if we are in a frightened state, we it's harder to be resourceful as well. So by this having a conversation with someone, they can give you information, knowledge that can support you in that situation, and you can have a lot more options that you think, based on how you think, how you feel at the time as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yes, most importantly, it's about you working on yourself to ensure that you still stay strong, right?
Mm,
You not allowing yourself to drop your confidence. You not allowing
mm,
yourself to be broken. You not being ashamed of where you are, but standing strong and powerfully for yourself. And again, we're talking now genderless, completely
mm.
genderless, because there are women
Yes.
and men who suffer from violence. There are a lot
Mm,
more men suffering from violence that you can imagine because
mm.
they're not speaking about it. And the reason why they're not speaking about that because of the stigma. How can a man suffer from violence? They can. They
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely can. Right? So that's why we are not
Absolutely.
saying woman and man, it is genderless. Absolutely
Mm,
genderless. Regardless of your gender, you still can suffer from that. But regardless of your gender, you shouldn't. Right? And
mm.
if you are, you got to speak up about it. If you are, you got to stand up for yourself. If you are, you got to realize you're worth a lot more than that. You're worth a
If
lot
you are
more than that.
facing, yeah, if you are facing a situation like this, please, as I said, reach out to some of the organizations in your area. Please feel free to reach out to me and Olga as well. We're here to help and support you emotionally as well. But ultimately, just understand that it is, something that you need to take a decision about it, and you might need some support, some encouragement, someone in your corner to support you with that. And if you know someone that's exposed to that, please share this video as well, share this podcast, so on your wall, so maybe others are getting awareness around, violence in intimate relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead, share with your loved ones because you never know what words of encouragement they will hear within this message that will actually help them to step up. I've been with friends who actually had to leave the country and run away from the country because of their violent partners. I had people
Mm,
who unfortunately finished their life by suicide because they couldn't bear the violence anymore. Right? I've
mm,
seen violence myself, I've been in a violent relationship myself, and I know you're not supposed to stay there. You're not supposed to stay there, right? If your partners are violent for one reason or another, that's their job to heal from that. You're not
mm,
their therapist, you're not their coach. You're not there to save
mm.
them. You're
And
there to save
and
yourself.
and someone can be nice and kind and violent in a stressful situation. So it doesn't mean that they can only, because sometimes it's confusing. Oh, like they're taking care of me, they are helping me, they are supporting me in all these other ways, but they're also beating me up. So it's usually because it has to do with emotional regulation, role modeling, coping mechanisms that people are not aware of, and they just don't know about another way of being. But thank you so much for being here, to all of you. Again, don't forget to share this on your page, just to raise more awareness. Please feel free to reach out to me and Olga if you have any questions about this, if you want more clarity, if you are facing this in your relationship, or when you date. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be gladly to speak to you. And we're also going to leave a link in the comments for you to access a free call with either of us.
Absolutely. Reach out. We are here to support you as much as we can. And if you're right now a single lady who is thinking, well, I actually can recognize the signs as you spoke and also the types of violence, and I would love to learn what is a healthy relationship. I would love to go into beautiful, healthy relationship, but I don't have a partner. What do I do? See the lady on the screen, Cristina? She's amazing because she has a special program for single ladies who actually, which actually is helping you to develop your healthy view on a relationship. I will help you to find your love of your life, because it's all about aligning yourself with what you want. So reach out to Christine if right now you're single and you would like to have a ring on that finger.
That's true. And if you are facing a lot of challenges in your relationship, please reach out to Olga before you get to violence, before it gets that bad that it's uh, it gets to a situation where there's not much you can do about it. So anything from cheating, from anger, from resentment, from maybe betrayal, there are a lot of solutions that you might have not been aware. So by reaching out to Olga and booking a call and signing up for her programs, you can learn another way of being in a relationship. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you all
Thank
next
you.
week. I look forward to see you all with another interesting topic in our hot and spicy podcast.
Really excited, looking forward. I will wish you all the best. Have a wonderful week, and we'll